Hi everybody and welcome to today's Art of Procurement. I'm your host, Philip Eidson. So you've just been appointed to a new CPO position. Your executive leadership team is looking at you to make an immediate impact while setting up procurement as a driver of sustainable long-term value. Your first 100 days, they can make or break your career. But where do you start? Today is day 3 of a special 5-part series. It's brought to you in partnership with Efficio, the world's largest procurement consultancy firm. This series provides you with the roadmap you need to hit the ground running. And in this episode, I spoke with Sushank Agarwal to discuss the tactics that achieve the delicate balance of achieving quick wins through in-year savings, while not immediately creating adversarial relationships across the stakeholder and supplier population. Sushank has over 17 years' experience advising C-suite level clients in global companies on strategic cost reduction and procurement transformation across a range of different sectors. And I started by asking Sushank if pushing for quick win savings always means that you're going to start off with an unhappy supply base.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting point, Phil. In more than 80% of the time, when there's a new CPO that takes a role, there's some sort of an urgency of benefits delivery. Mm-hmm. And that rigor is required, and the previous management teams not be able to push that level of rigor or have those skill sets, because sometimes the leads get complacent, and it's harder to get into that faster paced environment. So the new CPO, it's typically the impact, the biggest tangible impact they can make normally in the first few weeks, essentially by showcasing what they can deliver, tangible value they can deliver into the team. Especially when there's a business priority, number one, to deliver the in-year benefits, to maximize the in-year benefits. So it gets harder for the new CPO to land, but then if they have got the right skill set, the right approach, and the right mindset, it's a way to showcase that they have got that caliber, that tangible impact that they can make very quickly into the business, which is sustainable as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that earns them a lot of respect pretty quickly within the business, because that's generally the hardest thing for a new CPO, to have respect from, or to gain that credibility from the business and the senior business leads. And this is a really good way, even if there's no in-year urgency or very low in-year urgency from a savings perspective. It's a no-brainer for a number of CPOs to do.
So given that quick win savings are really important for new CPO, when you start to go down the line of creating a quick win savings program, does that always mean you're going to end up with unhappy suppliers at the end of it?
That's quite interesting you ask, Phil, because I'm actually seeing completely reverse of clients who've effectively deployed quick win savings. And the way I see most of the successful procurement teams drive it forward is through collaboration with the suppliers, where there's optimizing demand, requirements, making sure there's a win-win situation on both sides from a quick impact perspective. I had a client, for example, last year, who were looking at buying certain licenses, software licenses, and they were spending so much money on software licenses. And a quick win for them traditionally would have been just go in and ask for a rate reduction or the license fee reduction cost. By the way, they didn't even consider that they were buying way too many licenses, so they're not buying at the right levels. So trying to optimize demand and requirements is typically the way where the suppliers are able to reduce their costs and they're able to pass those benefits into the clients. And that's where we see majority of the value coming from. Mm-hmm. And we've also seen suppliers actually talking to the procurement teams and telling them that there's value to be had. And over the years, procurement teams haven't really been serious about those points or been pushy enough to push those demand or optimizing the demand side, taken that seriously. And I think this is kind of a no-brainer for the procurement teams to go for in collaboration with the suppliers. The instances where we do see suppliers unhappy or not really pleased with the approach is typically where they've been overcharging over the huge number of years, whether there's the rates or costs are not aligned to the market benchmarks. And that's when they have to come into the real world and go into the real prices. And by that time, they've got huge overheads which need to be optimized in line with the market. But overall, what we typically see is it's a win-win situation in majority of the cases when procurement teams go out and run this effectively.
Now, I'm sure that some of those suppliers, you said the ones that are unhappy, is because there's also that reputational risk for them of the fact that they realize that they've perhaps been a little bit rich in their margins and now they're going to get found out.
Yeah, there is a bit of that, and nobody's pleased when suddenly their margins are slashed down, even though that's what their peers have been earning at. So it's how you optimize your cost to make sure your business is still effective. Because the idea of this is not to get suppliers go down under and not make any margin at all, because that won't be sustainable at all. So we're looking at where the leading procurement teams are actually wanting to work with the suppliers to make sure they make a sensible margin out of it, because they are running a business at the end of the day. But they're optimizing the requirements and pushing the best value out to the clients.
Now, when you're looking for quick win savings opportunities, there's always this trade-off between going for some short-term savings today versus perhaps the risk of losing value over the long term. And I just wonder how you kind of look at that trade-off.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting dilemma. And most of my clients, this is almost the first or one of the initial points of discussion that we get into. And it all depends, really, the urgency of why they need those savings and how much is the urgency for the numbers to come in. I mean, I think simply put, in financial terms, it's the way I see it is the time value for money. So you could get 1 million savings today, or you could get 2 million savings in 2 years' time. But depending upon what the cost of capital is and what's the urgency to deliver those benefits, that 1 million today might be worth a lot more than 2 million in 2 years. So it all depends what the priorities are within the business, and I think those are the decisions that need to be made based on facts and the right category analysis. There is a balance, and I've seen clients where there is an urgency and they need money this year, but they don't want to lock in for the long term. So I've seen where some of the contracts are coming up for renewals, and the incumbent suppliers are able to, with some collaborative discussions, are able to offer a certain amount of discount for extension by a year. That just enables it's a win-win situation again, because the suppliers get surety of that contract for another year, while the clients get some value this year, which they're desperate for, rather than spending a lot of time and effort to go out of the market this year itself and limit their in-year number because of that. So shorter extension is generally something that some of the clients look at.
Yeah, and that allows you then to time the market better, especially when you're looking in a situation where you have multiple providers in a particular category or for a particular product. So then lining up all the expiration dates for probably a bigger initiative down the line, a more strategic initiative down the line.
Absolutely right, Phil. I think there's a variety of factors which will play in terms of how long do you want that contract to be. So if the market's doing the right trends, so for example, in some of the categories, spend categories where there's a huge influence on commodity prices, you have to look into the future trends and base your decisions on that. So you might want to lock in the prices for longer term in that instance, if you're seeing the price is going to go up north over the next few years. And it's a balancing act, and you have to account for all of those factors accordingly.
So when you are when you're chasing these quick savings, and it's something that I think a lot of procurement executives do when they're in a role, obviously to make an impact. What are some of the pitfalls that you see in the pursuit of those savings?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there's quite a few that we normally see, and unfortunately, there's a lot of the efforts that go in from an in-year quick savings perspective are regarded as tactical, and a lot of the procurement teams go for tactical supplier discounts by sending out letters to all the suppliers for a certain number of discount, and it's got a hit and miss, in my opinion. What I've seen in the number of clients, sometimes you get, but then it's not really sustainable because the suppliers then account for those prices next time round, the discounts that you offer. But there's 2 or 3 things that we normally see where the key pitfalls from a client's perspective. One is where the teams decide to go based on opinions. So where they feel that a particular supplier or a particular market or a particular category has got a lot of margin in it, and therefore they should be going after that, rather than a fact-based approach with the right treatment strategy. So I think there's an absolute need to do the right analytics, the right benchmarking to make sure you're not following a opinion-based agenda. It's a fact-based agenda, and you identify the right opportunity based on true facts and what the market's doing and how the benchmarks say. So that's I think number one. Number two, in my opinion, is more on the engagement with the stakeholders. So although procurement teams might be really sharp in terms of understanding the market and the key categories, one thing they sometimes miss on is this engagement with the key business stakeholders. So the CIO, COO, or CFO, in terms of making sure they bring the key stakeholders with them when they are shaping that RFP or reaching out to the market, because sometimes those disconnects are not very evident at the start of the process, but as you're coming closer to a contract award, there's a big mismatch between what a CIO would want in terms of what the supplier to do versus what the supplier thinks they are bidding for. So I can't really emphasize enough the importance of that, especially in an in-year savings environment where things run much faster or have to run much faster because every single day's delay is costing the business a huge amount of money. And then the third key thing is just in terms of just rigor, program management rigor, decisions being taken on time. You almost need to run this at a drumbeat because every single day is costing you money, and you need to be pretty clear in terms of savings tracking as well. So if you say you've ended up saving 5 million, which is going to have a 3 million in-year impact, you need to be able to showcase that through till the end of the year, so that for a CFO, for the finance director, they're able to recognize and see those numbers coming through. So in my mind, those are the 3 key things which are absolute essentials to be successful in a quick savings program.
And just to touch on savings tracking, because I know that's something that's it's so important, as you mentioned, and something that we don't necessarily always focus on. I wonder if you could, the organizations that you see doing that well, do they have a governance structure around savings? So, for example, getting buy-in to methodologies upfront and throughout the entire project with finance, so that finance can validate at the end. Do you see that as being pretty common, or is that something?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, Phil. I think it's not just the methodology part from a savings methodology at the very start. We see almost a weekly, once a week or even twice a week I've seen, where there's a constant reconciliation with the finance team to say these projects have finished off this week and here's the numbers, how they're going to be recognized and be tracked, so that there's a seamless transfer of that knowledge into the finance team, and they're aware that if this contract's going to kick off from next week at the reduced prices or the discount rates, they can see those rebates or they can see those discounts being applied to the invoices from next week onwards. So this is absolutely crucial. So I think a lot of the basics are done well by most of the procurement teams by getting the right methodology, but they leave it, they just throw it over the fence sometimes, and with an assumption that the finance team is going to be able to pick that up. And that tracking from a savings benefit doesn't isn't fully effective, and the suppliers see that through, and those savings start to dilute if that happens. So absolutely, as you said, finance integrated together with procurement is absolutely essential to do this.
Hi there, I want to thank you for listening into today's podcast as part of our series that helps you take the actions that you need in your first 100 days to position procurement for long-term success. If you'd like to get more insight into how to approach your first 100 days, or to reference all the tips that are covered in this series, Efficio has created a handy downloadable checklist. It's really easy to grab your copy of this checklist. All you need to do is go to artofprocurement.com/100 days. That's artofprocurement.com/100 days.